Avis was
just in time.
Hello, I was being wonky, but I got it.
Huzzah! We made it. We're here. We're doing the thing that we do once a month. Monthly minutes.
Monthly minutes.
This is the time where we just hang out and we talk about episodes and we talk about life and put on weird sunglasses and be the awkward geeks that we are. Okay, I don't
That
like
is
this.
true.
I don't have sunglasses. Not prepared.
I'm still drinking my morning coffee. It's only noon where I am. So, yeah. What's up, Adam?
And
What's
I'm
up?
still also drinking my morning coffee at 2
Avis?
p.m. here.
Yeah. How's it going? How's your Saturday?
There's just some random but I hope everyone's okay.
Oh no. Was it a child?
I think it was happy screams.
Okay.
It sounded like college screaming, so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right. Well, we're here to chat about episodes 34 through 30. That's where we left off
Ooh.
last time. That's gets us up to date if we can make it through. Anyone viewing, don't forget you can put questions in the chat. And we have a viewer from South Africa. It's 9 p.m. there. That is late. I mean, maybe you're drinking coffee. I drink coffee at 9 p.m. sometimes. But yeah, don't forget you can put any questions in the chat if you'd like. We'll try to answer them. I'll try to keep an eye and make sure we answer them as they come through. And yeah, here we go. Episode 34 is A Centaur's Love, Part 2. I know that we've chatted about this, at least Adam and I, outside of like podcast stuff, about just D&D systems in general and gods and like the ability to meet a god in the world. And I just want to start there. Like, how do you both feel about like having just stumbled upon this woman? Do you think she's a god?
I don't know.
Yeah,
don't know.
that's a real big ask right there.
Did you like her?
It's
I wish
as
we
a
had more
player or a
time.
character? Because
Both.
I thought as a player, I was like, yeah, this is a really interesting experience. I'm getting to learn more about the lore because as a player, I'm still generally confused on what exactly, in terms of God's placement in this world, the gods and again, like all that, like that was just coming out, and then like what exactly the meaning of the word God has in Utopia. I don't think I've figured that out yet, even. I think that's something I'm still trying to determine. So super interesting. As a character, I think she was pretty disappointed.
Oh. Interesting. What about Godfrey?
From a character perspective, I think Godfrey understands the gravity of meeting this person. Like, he's seen the text that listed her as like one of the old gods. She was clearly a statue, clearly something very potently magical happened that brought her back to life. But nothing was really shown. I don't know. I feel like Godfrey expected more from a god in the material plane to happen, and that it didn't happen. It has him questioning a little bit of like what it means and what that means for his concept on the world as a whole and what is and isn't possible and what ramifications this is going to have going forward.
Yeah. Those are profound thoughts from both of you. You met another person who was hanging out with you on the episode before this and this episode, the Mushroom King.
What a guy.
What a guy. Yeah, big lore drop there about the Forgotten Ones. Obviously, there's a lot more to uncover. But you all just kind of hang out with them and have dinner, sit by the fire, and then go to bed. And I still can't believe, Adam, that Godfrey rolled that natural 20 to see the Mushroom King, because I loved it. It was great.
Yeah. Sometimes the rolls just know where it wants the story to go.
Yeah, for sure. The fate.
Mhm.
Yeah, then you wake up and both the Mushroom King and Galdi are gone.
That was the most disappointing part of that. It's so many more questions. Also, like Mushroom King, I could have hung out with him for ages. I feel like we had the very beginnings of a relationship that could have gone so much farther, and it was just like, oh, we're gonna go find him again. How's the likelihood of that happening?
Yeah. Little mushroom people.
Hey, it was hard to see the first time.
Oh.
Have to roll another nat 20 to find him again.
Yeah.
I would like it to be like any time we roll a nat 20, even if
Just a-
it doesn't make sense, the Mushroom King
A
is
Mushroom
just there.
King appears
You know?
in front of us.
You don't see me! And then he disappears into the
Can't
night.
see me.
Just words of wisdom and then disappears.
That would be fun. Maybe cause a lot more derails than we already have.
What? We never derail on the show.
Oh my god. I don't know what you're talking about.
Never.
Yeah, so I think everyone was disappointed to wake up and find that they were both gone. There was a note left from Galdi just saying, I'm here if you need me. And you all get into this conversation about time and
Oh yeah.
craziness. And Morgus begins to have what I imagine as like a little bit of a like seizure, a little bit of a collapse and a relapse of memory. Godfrey obviously runs and tries to catch him, but with his short stature, he falls to the ground before Godfrey can fully get there. What was going through like Godfrey and Zippa's mind as you see this strong, intelligent dwarven man just fall for no reason?
Well, Godfrey knew that Morgus had memory problems and had been treating him before, like in the court. So for Godfrey, I feel like this was one of the like first moments, or maybe he's seen this once before, where he's seen like the physical action of what's causing his like memory loss. So he looked at it from a very medical perspective and was very concerned of what was happening to him and trying to do everything to just get him back and try to make sure that there's the least amount of damage possible from the event.
Yeah.
I would say opposite of a logical approach to that. More like panic, followed by mainly confusion with a little bit of fear of like, what is going on? I don't know how to react to this. What am I supposed to do? That was it.
Yeah. All very fair. And from like a behind the DM screen perspective, Daniel and I have talked about his backstory, made it together, but he intentionally wanted there to be a bunch of gaps, right? So he had no idea this was coming or how this was going to manifest in his character. And so, fun, evil moment for me as a DM, and just being like, here you go. Here's a little taste of like what's happening. And Daniel, being the awesome role player that he is, just like rolled with it. And it's like, this is this. And you all decide to head back to the Langwood Pecker after that. down episode, right? Because that's when you discover that Philip has gone missing. Ziba's like, I'm just gonna go take a nap.
It's a lot. I didn't have a process or what to do, and it's like, oh, things just keep going wrong. I can't fix this. I'm just gonna go to sleep. Okay.
Yeah. So you go and take a nap, and Livy and Godfrey and Morgus go and talk to Aurora, and that's sad. It's the same story. No one knows what's happened. Scylla goes up to bed because Liz couldn't join us for that play session, so I was being Scylla. And yeah, the episode is pretty much that. Like, you figure out what's going on, and then you head up to bed, and Godfrey, you and Morgus have a chat about his memory, which was a super, super tender moment, I think. Anything you want to add? Episode 34.
I think it's a good nap.
It's a good nap. Great. Episode 35. I called it What Are We Doing Here? Because I think there's a lot of questioning at this point in the party about, like, who is stealing these missing people? How the hell are we supposed to help? And, like, what are we even supposed to be doing? After that conversation that Godfrey and Morgus have, you know, Livy has a conversation with Zara about people gathering in the square and there being a mob of villagers who want to go take on the gnolls and to kind of stay away from that area. Her outlook on it was, you know, if you don't want to get wrapped up in drama today, don't go to this place. And instead, everyone in the party kind of had different outlooks on this, right? So it was a really awesome episode, in my opinion, of showing different motivations for the different characters. Godfrey especially, right?
Yeah. It's good. That kind of like decision conflict. That's what I kind of live for. The more that's like one person saying we need to do it and the other saying we need not to, and less so of the what should we do? I don't know. Maybe this. Maybe this. I feel like it's more like it adds more character when someone's very much like we have to do this thing. Then there's the tension.
Yeah. Ziba didn't seem to really care at first. And yeah, go ahead.
I would say sometimes though that's partly just me is when decisions are being made. I like to sit back a little bit at first and have people kind of like, you know, talk it out a little bit before I decide like, all right, here's where I'm gonna be on the issue. So
Yeah.
a lot of times when we're making decisions, I'll be like a little quiet at first and then be like, all right, so
Yeah, well, it seemed like the decision was made to go investigate Mixing It Up, potion shop owned by Philip, who's now missing. You have to go through the square to get there. That was not in like a forced railroad or anything from me. It's just like the way the city is set up.
Yeah.
Like the fastest way there is through that center like circle outside of town. And even Livy, you know, kind of takes the bait, so to speak, of like this mob as I'm describing it and telling them not to do this, that they're going to die and that this is stupid and that they can't take on the gnolls. And even after the mob begins to walk away, there's still deliberation and decision, you know, friction in the party until at the very end of that episode. Sid was just like, I'm not gonna let people die, and you can't tell me what to do, and just turns and walks away. And everyone follows.
yeah.
Was that a calculated decision, Avis, or was that just like Ziba truly had enough and like
I felt that is what my character would say. I don't like ever forcing a party decision, being like, well, I want to do this, so we're gonna go do this. Like, I don't think that's right in a party. And again, that's probably the reason, like, I want to sit back a little bit, let people talk it out, let them talk with it, figure out what exactly direction people want to go. And I felt that that was the direction we wanted to go anyways.
Yeah.
And I felt that it was fitting for my character in that moment to kind of like be the pushing drive for that decision to finally be like, this is what we're doing.
Yeah. I think Godfrey was 100% game for that.
Yep. He called for the vote because he knew that we were going to vote to go that way.
Yeah. The Bleeding Heart Party.
We're gonna be heroes. What do you mean?
It's great. I like it. It makes for an amazing story. I'm just saying, like, I love, like, yeah.
And yeah,
Gotta help
eventually we'll
people.
deal with the consequences of our actions.
We never have consequences for our actions.
Are you alluding to our play session on Thursday?
No, what do you mean? Like Godfrey said, we never have consequences.
There's no consequences.
Spoilers. Spoilers.
Well,
Great.
maybe there are consequences.
I don't know if I missed anything in that episode, but I'm pretty sure it was very RP heavy, and it inevitably led to that. Those were the most important pieces I pulled out of that. Anything else that you all would like to add?
I guess the only thing I would say is I thought that that moment kind of brings me back to something Edward said when we were doing warm-ups the other day about like I forget the question was like what pisses you off the most or what bothers you the most, and he brought up how people who refuse to accept like the reality of the situation or just what he thinks is acting is stupid, and like that moment coming back to it, I'm like, oh yeah. That is exactly what Louis thinks. He acted out right there.
Yeah.
The frustration with them and being like, grasp reality, you're gonna get yourselves killed. And they're like, no. And he's like, are you kidding me?
No, look how many of us there are.
Surely 40 people can take on 6 gnolls.
Yeah.
Silly villager. Oh, Avis is alluding to. I think this is like general knowledge at this point, because I think some of our bloopers for our Patreon tiers have been some of the warm-ups. Maybe not.
I don't think we ever record during warm-ups.
That's true.
Maybe we should, though.
Maybe we should. We do a warm-up before our session just to help everyone get in. Random questions. Either I just ask one of everyone, or what we've been doing more recently, which I think works better, is everyone just popcorns questions around, and it's really great. Questions like, Scylla, who's your patron? And Livy, what makes you the most mad? Come up. And
what's the meaning of life?
what's
your
the
character's
meaning
opinion?
of life? Yep. Yeah. Some of them get a little crazy.
We know who asked
A little
that
profound. Yeah. It's really good. Maybe we should record it.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's spoilers. I don't know. Maybe not.
Maybe a little bit.
All right. Episode 36. The start of a combat episode marathon.
It was never ending.
March to the Knolls. The start of this episode, you all have just started to follow the mob. Godfrey, you wiggle your way to the front and you meet Frederick, the half-orcish man that is leading the mob. Ziba wiggles her way into like the center of the crowd and makes some friends. And Livy and Morgus hang to the back while Scylla is still at the inn, mostly because Liz was unable to play that session. So yeah, what you go make some pretty bold character decisions. And this is like the first episode where I, as a DM, take a look at some of the actions from the DM side of the player characters and have to ask myself, is this the type of gaming the game / metagaming I want to allow at my table?
Please explain which parts.
Well, there's the part where I let Godfrey know that persuading Frederick into any sort of strategy would just take a little more skill. And then Ziba's like, yeah, guys, let's do this. Come on. And like comes in and makes that persuasion check for you.
Didn't go well.
Later on in combat, there's a moment where Ed has Livy take movement to clearly expose the location of Godfrey, who had stealthed and got himself into a strange predicament. And yeah, just curious your all thoughts about like those types of. Part of me is like, no, that's just the strategy of the game part of D&D. Like the mechanics part of D&D. It's still a game, right? It's still just like chess, just like checkers. There's still mechanics. Like you're still trying to play the game to your advantage most of the time, especially in combat scenarios. But yeah, just curious. Like those are the two that stood out for me in this episode.
Yeah.
That was definitely a calculated move on my part with the people, because I was like wanting to contribute to Godfrey's conversation because I liked the direction he was trying to go, but like as a character, like Liva's not just suddenly going to become some diplomatic veteran with knowledge of what we're getting into and going to go try and persuade someone out of it. Like that was just not a thing Ziba can do. So I was like, I want to like just not support my other player entirely just because, and always play this, you know, ignorant character who's never gonna like be able to have the knowledge to persuade, like see others' point of view or persuade them that way. Like I like playing off the ignorance a little bit because I think it's a place to like learn and grow, but I don't want it to like hold me back from being able to like give a helping hand in like those persuasive arguments. I was very much like, how can I roll with this? I was thankful that you let me like at least try, because I was trying really hard to think of a way to be like, how can Ziba, with all of her bravo and, you know, pride and just like ignorance of what they're getting into, because generally at that point as a player and a character, I didn't know what a null was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, how could she contribute to this if she wants to participate in this conversation? So I was trying really hard think of a way. So I was kind of glad you let me like give it a shot, even if it didn't work out. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I would also agree that I really like that kind, because that's also something you see in like shows and media, right? Is sometimes a character who's not directly involved in helping just still conveniently does something at the same time that helps the situation as a whole.
Yeah.
And like I feel like there's enough room for that where it's not like super metagamey, especially the way that Ziva did it in that episode. Like I think that was brilliant, Avis, how you were just like in the back, not directly contributing to what Godfrey's doing, but rallying some other people and just like providing this inspiration from the back.
I don't got your veteran background. I don't know what we're getting into, but I was like, I can do something helpful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree that upon like thinking about it, that's the type of like strategic gaming that I really enjoy. And End is not here to defend himself, so obviously not that he would need to, but the gaming the map in that way, or like the disregard of ability checks that make Godfrey and that Knoll not visible in real gameplay versus like your ability to see everything in front of you. Those are moments that are a little more tricky for me. And I'm a default to nice person, so I'm just normally gonna be like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, you try to convince the mob to move forward and get stealthy, any sort of strategy, and they're just like, there's enough of us. We're just gonna take them on. And
We're just people. We're just people.
yeah, we're just
All
people.
right. Cool.
So you all decide to run ahead, which is a hilarious roleplay moment for Ed, where he's just like a kid, he's like a nerd body, which is awesome. And then you get to the place where Bitsy had flown forward earlier and knew that the gnolls were kind of hanging out. You get to the road, and we use Roll20s, and I do dynamic lighting on these things so that each character can only see what they can see, and I try to like make sure if there's trees that the trees are blocking, like kind of do like a more in-depth map creation so it feels super realistic for you all. And as I dropped you onto that map on the road, no one could see any of the gnolls, which led to the really awesome moment of like Godfrey stealthing on one side and then Ziba just being like, yeah, I'm gonna do what he's doing. Just like going to the other side. Godfrey pretty much failing that stealth check, and Ziba like seeing Godfrey from the other side of the road.
Am I still doing what he's doing?
Yeah, it was a really great moment. And then Godfrey, you get ambushed, and Ziba gets an arrow shot at her, and the battle commences.
Didn't I find a guy in a tree?
You
Yeah.
did find a guy in a tree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good time.
Yeah.
I was a
How
little hesitant. I was like, do I start this battle? I guess I'm just gonna get the guy.
Yes. I think there are a few like key moments for me. I'd love to just like hear like fun key moments from both of you on this fight. The first is, Ziba, you take down the gnoll from the tree, and then you look around and you're like, where is everyone? And you run out to the road and you're like, where did everybody go? Yeah, it's great. And Godfrey, I continue to this day, because having played a monk in a game with Avis, who knows what my roleplay was like, it is so hard to roleplay attacks for a monk when it's essentially mostly unarmed attacks. I know you have your short sword that you use, but your ability to roleplay like innumerable amounts of rounds of just unarmed strikes in very creative and like differing ways is unprecedented in my opinion. Like,
Thank you.
Maybe better than Marisha Ray, you know.
Wow,
that's fully my opinion, but
thank you. Yeah, that's just a lot of where my like mental goes to when I think about D&D, because like I was introduced to the game as it being like a combat simulator. So everything I did role play wise was role playing what my character was doing in combat. And like the first 5e character I played was fighter, and so with that I was experimenting with, oh, how do I make my fighter cool? Because I was battle master, so he did all these maneuvers. So I was like, how does this maneuver make sense? Like, what does he do to make it do that? And I was like, oh yeah, he could do this with the weapon, and he can move like that. So it just like it converts well to monk, because I'm also a big kung fu movie fan, you know. So like, oh, what elements of this could I like work in, and like what pieces of anatomy are working, and where's my environment, and how could I use that? It's so much fun for me to just lean into that.
Our watcher has 2 comments on this. They say Ziva going absolutely feral on the gnolls has been so entertaining.
Yeah.
And that was my number 2 part of like everyone's taken out a few gnolls, and of course the strategy on my end was to hold back like the leader. They're not gonna run out first, like they're gonna send all their little minions out first, and they I guess I never gendered the gnoll, but they just come around the tree and Zibba's the first person to see them, and their turn is right before yours, and they're just like running at you, and you're like, oh hell no, and you just like finish the run and like start slashing at
Me
it.
and you halfway.
I don't even think you're raging at that point. I think you're still just yes. That was a fantastic moment.
I was like, I have to have some build up moments because I knew this fight was gonna get harder and harder. And I don't like to rage without like some build up. I don't like just being like, we're raging now. Like sometimes, yeah, like it's really, and it's, I sometimes find it really hard to do because sometimes I approach a fight and I know game mechanically that like I need to rage like right away because otherwise this fight's not gonna go that well for everyone else involved. Including myself especially. So I'm like, I know I need to rage, and so I know when we're building up to that big fight, and you know this skirmish on the road was most likely going to build up to something more. I was like, okay, I gotta like start having a vendetta. I need to have a reason that if I see I approach a scenario where I need to rage right away, I'm like, I'm already there, I'm already ready, and like I'm already feral for these people to go off on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you can see this. You saying that makes me super excited for listeners to hear episode 39. Because yeah, it that just yes. And then the second comment is the teamwork between everyone has been really great. I think combat can be a bit monotonous in actual play podcasts, but this really has been a continuation of the storytelling, which is just, you know, kudos to you all for continuing to like actively role play and like be in your character and not try to like win the combat, you know, like win the combat, but like from a character perspective. And I think all of you do that so well.
Yeah.
I will say I'm still working on those attack descriptions that Godfrey does so well on. Sometimes I'm like, how do I swing it differently than last time? And that's something I really struggle with, and I'm still trying to work on.
Barbarian has been the hardest one for me describing too, because I play a barbarian in a Sunday game, and it's like, well, how do I attack but matter?
But
You know?
matter, yeah.
But
how
like,
do I build up to
more
this
reckless.
rage,
Like,
right?
what does my reckless attack look like? Like, what am I doing that's leaving me so open? Like, how am I, and how is it helping me? You know, it's difficult.
What is the motivation here for me to just go
What's my
complete
character?
chaos?
It's what my character would do
Yeah.
in a good way.
But I think the subclass that you end up getting with Barbarian, like that's usually where I go to help with those attacks.
Oh, we're building up to that.
Yeah, we're building up to it.
I was gonna say you don't have a subclass yet.
Not yet.
Wink.
Should I level 3? It just hasn't come up yet.
Fine, it's narrative. You haven't narratively unlocked it yet, and that's also really cool. And it's a cool like storytelling moment for it to
Wasn't the episode we're currently talking about? Was the episode where I was like, oh, I get a +2 when I'm raging?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Sometimes I also discover new things about my character while we're playing. I'm like, oh.
You can play D&D for years and discover a new thing. I literally learned a new rule yesterday that I have been ruling wrong the whole time. It just happens. There's so many rules.
That's where like I've been very forthcoming about being a storytelling DM first and a rules focused DM second. And that's why like I really don't give two shits if Adam or Daniel or you know any one of you are just like, actually, you know, that isn't how you rule that, or there's something else to see here, and we're going to talk about it and we're going to move forward in the episode, and then I'm going to research it so that I can try to remember the 1 million bajillion rules of D&D in the future. And then also just like in terms of my thoughts around player character combat, like I'm going to trust that you know how many actions your player can take and how many and what those look like. And Godfrey, you're in this episode was when you were like, I took too many attacks on my last round and I need to pull that back, so I'm just gonna take one. And like that's just a kudos to you, because you know I'm not checking that shit. I'm not Like, I
There's so
probably
much
should
for
have
you to
known,
keep
but
track of
yeah.
as a DM. There's so much for you to keep track of. Like, you just have to trust your players for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I
Yeah.
appreciate the help
Yeah.
there.
I also want to make a comment just based on like combat sessions for me playing in the podcast is I'm trying not to look at the map as much as possible when I'm describing or trying to talk about the combat. Because I
Yeah.
know I catch myself being like, oh, I move over there
Mhm.
and I move to this square and like how many feet can I move? And that's, I'm trying very hard to just be like, my character sees this creature and is taking this action to get there and then trying to move it without saying the mechanical part of it just for the podcast.
Yeah,
Something
it's
like that.
definitely different than
It's
like
so different.
even streaming. Even streaming, you can
Mhm.
see the map most of the times, and you can just be like, "I'm gonna move here," and people can see what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
cool.
often try to say where I'm moving in regards to other people. I'm always like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
run past Morgus or past this, so like a sense of where everyone is.
Yep. Yeah. Well, you eventually take down all the gnolls just in time for the villagers to run through. And there's a hilarious moment where I used a swarm of insects image. as the-
I was like, what the
Oh.
heck is that?
Yeah, at the very beginning of the fight, there's just this token on the map that looks terrifying. It's just a whirling mass of unintelligible goo. I just panic and I start pinging it without trying to say anything in the podcast.
I
So,
think
like,
I
I'm
did
trying
like
to-
briefly. I was like, what the heck is that?
I was just like waiting for Mystic to describe, like, what are we seeing here? Like, why is this on the map?
Why is
Yeah,
this
and then
swirling mass of
and then I moved it
centipedes?
to the GM layer from at the
Yeah.
beginning because it wasn't relevant. And then
Mhm.
yeah, it comes back on.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, it's the village.
It was mild fear for a second. And I was like, what?
I go back and forth between pledging to different token and like illustration makers Patreons to get tokens. And to this day, none of them have ever made like a mob of humanoids or a swarm of humanoids. So I have to work with what I have. And it was either rats or insects. But I even made like a stat block just for them and like all
Oh.
of these things that never got used because you all killed them all before they got there. And I was like rolling behind the screen to see how fast they were moving, and they were moving very quickly. Yeah, it was great. Scylla then comes running up. Liz was able to join. Liz actually sat patiently through, I think, that entire combat because it just didn't. I wanted to make narrative sense for everyone, and we had talked about it beforehand, and she was fine with that. And it just didn't make sense for Scylla to just randomly pop up and like
Mhm.
be a
Like
part
right
of the.
before combat.
Yeah, like right. It seemed to. Yeah. So Scylla joins the party after having her bed day. And Avis, you actually asked Liz what Scylla was doing during that time in our warm-up this week, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I think I did.
I forget what she had said. I think she said she like woke up, was feeling better mentally.
I asked, how did you like get there that fast? I was like, what was your morning like when you realized you had to come catch up to us? I was like, how did you wake up? Did you wake up frantic? Did you like, were you just ready to sprint and catch up to us? Like, what happened? That's what I asked her.
Yeah, she said yes.
All the above. And I was like, all right.
Yeah. And then, you know, the villager, Godfrey, you're just kind of like, this is not it. Like, I know that this is not it. There has to be a base. There's something somewhere. You and Livy begin to look around, and you find a little path. The party agrees to head down that path. You leave the villagers behind as you scout ahead. You walk down that path. We're now into episode 37. Walk down that path, trying to be stealthy. And you're like moderately stealthy at first. Godfrey's able to assassinate one of the Knoll guards that spots them. And in the midst of like, this is how I imagine at least, in the midst of like laying down that Knoll body on the ground silently, Morgus full on trips. Nat 1 stealth, full on trips in his heavy armor onto the path, making a loud noise. And the two of you are kind of just like deer in the headlights as more gnolls with torches come running your way just as the sun begins to set and the rest of the party is hidden in the tree lines around you. Very curious, like, you took a short rest before you went, but like, in terms of like, again, just talking about gaming the game, talking about the game itself, how many hit die did you spend? You remember? Like, were you thinking like, oh, this might be a marathon, I need to conserve things? Like, what was just the general strategy leaving the road fight as you head to the base?
We didn't take a short rest between the road fight and the base.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, we
No,
went
Godfrey just
straight
pushed
for it.
everyone straight on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this was just me leaning into one of Godfrey's flaws, and that's a dangerous flaw to have. It doesn't come up all the time, but it's coming up now. And no one kind of challenged him on it or made any suggestions to stop, so everyone was just on board. So
Yeah.
we just went forward.
Yeah, I think I was slightly injured. Like maybe I was like down like 6 hit points, but I wasn't terrible going into that.
Yeah, I think Livy was the one who took the most damage, and I think Godfrey just used some of his healer's kit to like bandage him up. It was like, all right, you're good. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. When did this episode end exactly? Is that the end of it?
The end of it, yeah, it's the Nat 1 right before the combat at the Knoll base.
The next episode hasn't come out yet.
It's out for Patreon subscribers,
Right.
so we could talk about it slightly if you want, but yeah.
I'll leave that up to you. I had a thought about going into the next episode, and
Yeah,
it's
go for
that I don't play spellcasters. I don't enjoy them. Alright? There's just even more game mechanics to consider, and I'm not the best at game mechanics. I'm slowly learning. I played like maybe 3 different types of classes. I played a cleric back in middle school, and then I played a paladin, I played barbarian, and cleric's the most spellcasty I got, and that was a while ago, so I'm not big into spellcasters. So going into that fight, me processing that, oh, I hope our spellcasters have enough spell slots, never came up. That was never a thought on that was not even on my radar. I was like, well, I'm not dead, so we can keep going, right? Like, well, we got hit points. We can do this all day long. Let's wait. And so there were moments where the spellcasters were like, it's getting a little too dangerous. And I'm like, what do you mean? We're all standing.
Yeah. No, we got this.
No one's dead yet. What do you mean?
Yeah, no, because Godfrey at that point is completely out of key points at the end of that episode. He used that last key point to assassinate that Knoll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't think about any of that. That was never on my radar. Which, I mean,
yeah. No,
I
as a
guess
character,
also fits for Ziva.
Yeah, his character, I don't think about that either, because it's like I try not to game that way in D&D.
Yeah,
Like,
But
if the
I was
spellcasters
generally
are
confused
low,
at moments
yeah.
where you guys were like, I'm a little worried. I'm like, why are you worried? This is
I
fine.
think
We got this.
I think the most beautiful thing for me is like this was not a forced marathon, right? Like
Mhm.
it was not like wave after wave after wave of Knoll. It was like could have been 2 distinct combat encounters, and it could
Mhm.
be 2 distinct combat encounters that the party never chooses to participate in, right?
Yeah.
And instead, you all made it a marathon for yourselves.
Yeah.
Which is really cool for me because as you all know, having come out the other side of it, that fight you're
Well,
about to get into is a doozy.
yeah. We don't know who comes out the other side of it. You know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just mean Adam and Avis as humans. You've come out the other side
Yeah.
of it. In this plane, on this
Yeah.
on Earth, you were good. Not on Plee-Plu.
No. All rules go out the window on Plee-Plu.
All right. Anything you want to add about the episodes?
I think, was it during these episodes where Godfrey like asks Zara like, where does your heart pull you to?
Oh
Was that during that?
yes. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
yeah, once
What are we
so-
doing here, right?
Yeah,
keeps
it
going
was
back.
during that.
I'd forgotten about that.
I forgot about that too, and that was an amazing moment for me.
When you brought it back the second time, I was so confused. I was like, what are you talking about? Like this South what? Why are you so obsessed with this? Because like that was just, I don't know. Maybe because like I'm very in character, but it was like a completely minor moment for me. I was like, that's a weird thing to say. Moving on.
Yeah.
And the fact that Godfrey just like took that, held that, last shot of that, I was like, oh, all right. What's going on there?
Well, there
Some
was a
character
reason for
development.
that, right?
Mhm. Yeah, it's because when Godfrey first entered town, what Mysherius told him in his head was follow your heart.
All
And
right.
so for like all of the episodes since saying that, like just randomly in parts of my notes, I was just writing down follow your heart. Like trying to ruminate like as a character what that means and why Mysteria would tell that to me. And then like I think it was in the middle of the woods, him and me, like as a character ruminating on it, made that connection that like everyone was heartbroken. And maybe that's the kind of hearts that have to be followed. Like maybe it was a hint from Mysteria. Maybe it was just something he's reading into too much. But it's always that option that I like to follow, like as a player. It's like if the DM purposely gives you this hint, sometimes it's not just role play. Sometimes it's also a hint that could be like explored upon in the right circumstance. So it was cool that there was like a payoff for that. I was like, this direction. That's surely where we're supposed to go, but let's kill Knowles instead.
Exactly. All right.
And we still aren't in that direction.
Yeah.
All right, that's the end of us talking about the episode. It's now time for the Q&A. Everyone can ask questions of anyone. Just like our warm-up popcorn style.
Oh, the power.
So,
It's hard because I feel like every time I think of questions, there are questions to you as a DM that I definitely can't have the answer to as a player in the game.
you can certainly ask them, though.
It's
Never know if you don't try.
so it's about adding the three characters who came in after the start: Godfrey, Scylla, and Morgus.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, it felt like a whole setup where the dream was really important.
Mm-hmm.
And like in a way, having those artifacts and being part of that dream really sets those first characters up as being like the main driving force for this plot that seems to be going forward. Like, how do you see adding in these extra characters, and how do you feel like they're going to fit into this overall arc, like going past where we are now?
That's a great question. And I can certainly answer that for you.
Okay.
And there's no spoilers involved, I don't think. The dream call to adventure for the initial adventuring party was purely because a post on Reddit asking people if they wanted to join a D&D podcast. That's how we ended up with they went through a few rounds of like interviews with myself and Leah Fritsch, aka Crabomancer, aka Austin, And then we all ended up needing to play test, right? So
Mhm.
think of this more as like the quest alluded to in the beginning of Exandria Unlimited rather than like a long-term storyline continuation.
Okay.
It was a dream. It was a playtest dream. And yes, certainly Anchor had the crown of Medusa that he brought back from the material plane and gave to Ziba. But for me as a DM,
That thing must be
the
so good.
device was only to add to the fact that Utopia is a world where humans and gods intermingle, and also tie them together for a mission in a certain way. Because unlike Godfrey and Morgus and Scylla, who could all already be tied together in a mission to find the gods through the Carousel Court, that party hadn't gotten to that point yet. They didn't fully understand what the long continuing theme of the campaign would be, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
So I don't think it
Sure.
has any positive or negatives to like the 3 Carousel Court members that have joined Ziba and Livy. Everyone at this point has the same knowledge. It's just that Ziba has this weird crown that she forgets she has.
I definitely do.
And Ed had the arrows that brought
Mhm.
Galdi back to life, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have so many knickknacks in my bag that I've just gathered along the way. And it's gonna be random stuff. It's gonna be like a random flower that almost got me killed. This crown that someone gave me once. This shiny rock I found on the road. And like, I'm just gonna have it happens in there. And then they'll be like, "Oh yeah, remember I had this thing."
This is
but at
better
least
than
your bag is clean.
yeah.
Most of the
Right.
time, yeah.
Not random monster bits.
Yes. Crap.
I know. I realize Godfrey still has that gargoyle head.
Oh yeah.
Saw that in my
Why you-
inventory.
What's the collection of monster parts?
It'll be important sometime.
I've just realized now how often you've done that, or you've randomly taken like a piece of the monster, and I'm like, what's he building in there?
I think this is a good time to remind you all that we are using encumbrance, just not for coin weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost had a cumbrance with all of those apples, but I don't have those apples anymore, so I'm doing pretty good.
I'm pretty sure I'm sticking to it.
Okay, all right.
Let me just double check.
I'm doing pretty good now.
I have to. I mean, how much does the gargoyle head weigh? We never really.
Oh,
I think I have it weighing 1 pound right now.
Oh yeah, it definitely weighs more than a pound.
No,
Probably
it
like
actually
5
has no
pounds.
weight. It's in as other possessions.
It's probably like 5 pounds.
Okay.
And that's me being nice, I think.
I think probably the reason I often also
Yeah.
forget that I have stuff on me is because I'm so used to being party storage.
Mm-hmm.
Like so many of my characters have ended up being party storage, or I'm the one carrying everything, and so people are like, "I can't hold this. Here you go." And then I'm like, "Oh, am I holding that for you?" Yeah, I forgot I was carrying the 10 healing potions for the party. Do you need one of them?
Yeah. I have a question for Ziba. What does Ziba actually want a response to the letter she sent?
No. There was not much hesitation to that. No. It was very much a. She doesn't want them to be completely heartbroken like these people are. She doesn't want them to be upset by her disappearance, but she still doesn't want them to stop her. And I think she's terrified by a response that is trying to convince her once again, as she has in much of her backstory, to give up this pursuit, to give up this dream, and doesn't want that, doesn't want to hear it, especially if she receives this letter at a time where maybe they've seen shit or they've been through stuff. To receive a letter that would be like, stop, come home, don't do this anymore. That would be just crushing. And I feel like even if we got a letter, we wouldn't read it. We would not.
Hmm.
Just hold on till they're really like, all right. You know, if I'm just gonna quit doing this anyways, I guess now I'll read it. I think that's the point it's gonna have to reach. Can't deal with any non-supporters, all right? Gotta have
Yeah.
supportive people around us only.
What about Godfrey? I don't know if listeners will remember, but Godfrey sent a letter at one point.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I know exactly who this letter went to. I think I have a
I've been meaning
hunch.
to send you messages about these letters you've been sending. And every week I'm like, I think about sending it and it's like really late. And I'm like, I'll just wait. Like this whole, like I shouldn't bother her just randomly in the middle of the night with this thought. And then I forget. And it just
I do that too.
mind.
I'm like,
So I will open up a message right now and I will send it eventually.
I believe there are only 2 options, so
Yeah.
yeah. But does he get responses to his letters?
No.
I didn't think so. Okay. Larger can of worms.
Where are we fishing?
Actually, I'm not going to ask that. I changed my mind. Avis, do you have any questions for us?
I'm trying to think of questions that aren't spoilers. It's my problem. Because I got questions about things that are happening.
Some reason I just thought of the Middle Kid songs questions. Like my brain is literally just a library of music. It's just like a song for everything. Anyway, keep going.
I don't know. I can't. I always focus very on what am I doing right now? What is happening in this
Yeah.
moment, in this present? What's the move we are making right now? We don't think ahead. And we
Yeah,
carry to think behind, but
those are spoilers.
and so I'm like, I can't ask that.
What is Godfrey and Ziba's just general opinion of Wimpston so far?
I don't honestly think we've been in the town much. We've been in a depressing bar and we stopped some people from getting themselves killed.
Mhm.
But we've only really seen, I think, the people of this town with very singular thought motives and don't really know the town enough to be like, is this a cool place or not?
I think
And
Godfrey.
then there was Carling.
No, that's separate. You know, I'm not gonna take out the whole town with my feelings on one character.
I think
Go ahead, Adam.
Godfrey really appreciates the town, but is definitely going to destroy the court that's here.
Fair enough.
Like he is
But
not
Kevin,
happy at all, and I've been putting off as like a character and as a motivation to go talk to the blacksmith who's supposed to be the leader of the court here, because I don't
think
that
Kevin's
interaction
actually
is gonna go
secretly
well.
really competent at his job.
That would be worse in Godfrey's eyes. Like if he's competent and the court is how it is, like it's not going to be like Morgus is going to have to hold him back, and Morgus won't hold him back. You know?
Morgus will be like, no, let's see how this plays out.
Oh,
Yeah,
let's see
exactly.
some spy. Let's go.
He'll like stoke the fire. You know, he'll just like throw a couple more like pieces of kindling on there just to see what
Yeah.
happens.
I mean, you all have one bounty left. You still haven't spoken to Morthos. You have no idea about Philip. You haven't investigated the Southwest. There's a lot of things in town. Like, I guess, like you're saying, like you haven't really experienced the town. You haven't been to the temple. You haven't been to any of the other buildings.
No,
It's two
we haven't
singular
dealt
events,
with
only
like
it's
the
one track
bugs and the
mind.
bridge one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But also we've been. It's not like we have been ignoring it. We've been following leads. They
We
just
just haven't gone touristing, you know? We haven't
Yeah.
gone on our tourist day yet. We just look around, see what fun shops
Yeah.
there are.
We tried to, and then there was an angry mob that we had to save.
Are you glad you came earlier than you were planning to?
What were we gonna do instead? I don't remember.
We were gonna go help the face of Utopia find his maul or his missing hammer. I still kind of wish we had stopped and done that before coming this way.
I'm
At
glad
this
we came
point
when
in
we
these
did.
episodes.
Yeah.
What was that?
I'm kind of glad we came when we did.
That's why I wish we had. I want to know why. Why are you glad?
All
What's
right,
the
well,
connection?
that's all the time we have for monthly minutes. Thank you so much for tuning in, for listening. New episode out on Monday.
Woo!
Tell your friends that you like the podcast. Share it with people. Tell them that we would enjoy their support if you can get them to get their support. And yeah. Anyone else want to add anything?
Enjoy the chaos of the next episode.
The chaos is not going away anytime soon. That is for sure.
No, yep. Just more chaos.
All right. Bye.
Bye.